since I've been over here. But then again, not that much. Okay. I would like to invite everyone to rise and sing, rise in body or spirit, and sing with me, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, which is our anchor for this month.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, traveler of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
Thank you, thank you. We are here today to honor those who have given their lives over many decades, centuries even, for causes in which they believed. These men and women believed their actions would somehow result in a better world for everyone. How do we best honor these men and women without having to honor any more of them in the future? Probably if we could just spread our mission, which here at UUCL is love plus connection equals transformation. I call you now into this connection part by uplifting some of the opportunities for being together that will be happening around here real soon. Please note that there are more announcements printed in the newsletter. Yes, when Heather's not here, we don't have orders of service. That's just the rule, unless somebody knows how to do it. Okay, so Wednesday, we have nothing scheduled. That's the one that's coming up. Building and Grounds Committee is planning a work day for June 8th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we had a great brainstorming meeting last Sunday for our very own UUCL Pride Service, which is on June 9th. If you will please, thank you, Adam. I am lit. Please let Jen Dean or myself know if you're interested in participating in the UUCL Pride Service. I mean, it's one of those, do it together. What is collaboration? Co-create. Heather's co-creation Sundays. So, Rose Dynasty is having a grand opening Sunday, June 9th. That's right after our Pride service from 2 to 5 p.m. at the brand new Rose Dynasty Center on Memorial Boulevard. Pride and Faith at Beacon Hill Fellowship. If you're still interested, you could sing in the choir. We're going to be rehearsing one more time on June 8th, and then right before the service on June 13th at 5:30, service is at 7 on June 13th. So it's a lovely service, and if you can get to the service, you don't have to sing in the choir. I think you usually get free cake, drinks. Pride in the Park is Saturday, June 15th. We still need people to sign up. There's a sign-up sheet back there, the back of the sanctuary. Or is that the front? Whichever. So she needs people to organize ideas for the tent, what we might be wanting to give away, will we do anything like have a kids activity. So if you want to see her, she'll be back. And other than that, just check our newsletter on Monday for more information about these and other lovely things happening here. Thank you very much.
Good morning. And I think most of you know me, but I'm Mary Saint-Denis. I'm today's worship associate, and I use the pronouns she and her, but honestly, I'm not really bothered by any of them. come to this Unitarian Universalist, it's one of those days. Welcome to this Unitarian Universalist congregation of Lakeland. Let us light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, to gather us all anew into the sacred space. As the flame of our chalice rises to meet the flame of our souls, let us remember the diverse beauty that each of us brings to this place. Would you please Jen, would you please light our chalice as we sing, Rise Up, O Flame, hymn number 382, 2 times 3. Two times through.
Goodbye.
Good job, you get a gold star.
And it goes like this. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
This brings us to our moment of joys and sorrows. Our ritual of joys and sorrows is a moment in which we can quietly contemplate that which is stirring inside of us. We experience joys and sorrows because we are connected with one another and with all of existence. None of us is existing as a singular self. Joys and sorrows is a time to embody this interbeing by cultivating the compassion needed to sustain life. We need to learn to be compassionate for ourselves and for all other beings if we are to find a bigger truth. In our Joys and Sorrows book, which was brought to me earlier, you're able to write any significant joy or sorrow occurring in your life that you would like for the congregation to know. It sits on the back of the back table, along with the usher and reading sign-up list. And hospitality sign-up list. And the leader of the service reads from it before we take time to participate in our weekly ritual of placing pebbles in the bowl. So, today, May 26th, a joy, I'm excited to celebrate my birthday in 4 days. Sage. All the children are not, none of the children are in the room at the moment, if you want to do anything adultish, because they are practicing and putting together their service for next Sunday, which would have been one of our upcoming things that did not get into the bulletin yesterday, so it didn't, Monday. So it didn't get in my memory. Anyway, so they're not in, but congratulations, Sage. Another joy, Ken and Dorothy were in Chicago watching Heather graduate. So proud of her, Dorothy. And aren't we all? So, you are now invited to come forward and place a colored stone representing your joys, concerns, and sorrows into the water. Let the many colors of our joys and sorrows mingle together, symbolizing the great adventure of our lives.
gather, tucked back in this friendly neighborhood between the beautiful tall pines. We are a community of people who have arrived from many different paths, yet we seek a common goal: to bring more love to a hurting but beautiful world. We do this through the relationships we build and the gratitude we express with our time, talent, and treasure. Centered in love, we can renew and transform this world spiritually and ethically towards joy for all. So in this moment, we will take up an offering that will assist us on this journey. A true war story is never moral. It does not instruct nor encourage virtue, nor suggest models of proper human behavior, nor restrain men from doing the things men have always done. If a story about the war seems moral, do not believe it. If at the end of a war story you feel uplifted, or if you feel that some small bit of rectitude has been salvaged from the larger waste, then you have been made the victim of a very old and terrible lie. This is by Tim O'Brien from How to Tell a True War Story. And then we're going to sing hymn number 1026, If Every Woman.
Thank you.
those are my sentiments about war, I think. And so Memorial Day is a difficult time. However, when Heather asked me to do the service today, she offered the following service from the UUA Soul Matters. These are not my words. These are the words of a Reverend Karen Anderson, and the title of this Memorial Day sermon is To Share Their Burdens. It's like going into a dense forest without a map, he said. Once you're in the forest, it's easy to lose your bearings and very unlikely you'll ever exit the same way you came in. It's clear right away that you're on a different journey than the one you thought you'd be taking, than the one you were told you'd be taking. It's not even clear it's a journey anymore. Mainly, it's a matter of keeping yourself moving. This is what my husband Scott's divinity school professor had to say about war. Scott says he only talked about his military service 2 or 3 times, and each time it caught him off guard. It was hard to think of him as a soldier. His gentle way and slight build fit the image of a theology professor perfectly, but didn't in any way match the stereotypes of an army sergeant. But then again, if you paid attention, there were visible signs of his service. Scott says he carried weight, something heavy, something not easily communicated or shared. The best he could do was talk about a forest. Never a story about the actual events, just this metaphor of being lost in a forest. I start this morning with this story because Scott's divinity school professor, it seems to me that Memorial Day is largely about stories. Or maybe it's better to say it's about being visited by stories. Here's another story from Scott. He grew up in the Church of the Brethren, which is one of the 4 historic peace churches: Amish, Mennonite, Quaker, and Church of the Brethren. Anyway, when he was at college at a Quaker school, he led a Quaker youth group. Part of that role was to help the juniors and seniors in high school wrestle with whether or not to register as conscientious objectors. To assist with that, a number of veterans were invited to come talk to the youth. The lieutenant with the Purple Heart made the biggest impression. He said he was proud of the medal, but he also called it a burden. It's not easy to wear, he said, because it lies. It tells the truth about one story, but certainly not the truth about the whole story. For instance, it doesn't tell of the night I purposely slowed my pace and pulled back. Dadgummit, no. Just enough so others could lead and possibly take a bullet instead of me. I'm sorry. I promised I would not do this.
Deep breath. We've got this. We're here with you.
I have to carry that story alone. Okay. The final story I want to share is something a friend of ours told us years back. Our friend served in Afghanistan. He told us about the cognitive dissonance a good friend of his in the Army felt when he was welcomed home. He lived in a small town, and after coming back from serving in Iraq, they held a dinner and ceremony for him. A hero's welcome, basically. This soldier confessed that he felt sick through the entire thing. Heroics weren't involved, he said. oh, I forget who she is. So wherever you are, if you're listening, I can't help it. I don't want to make you cry either. Go. Go, girl, it's your turn.
Okay.
Or you want to,
All right.
you want me to try
Absolutely.
again?
Nope, I got it. Heroics weren't involved, he said. I never engaged the enemy, not even once. I just cleaned up bodies. A lot of innocent bodies. Planes dropped bombs. People died. I cleaned it up. To call it heroic just doesn't make any sense. Again, Tim O'Brien writes, a true war story is never moral. It does not instruct, nor encourage virtue, nor suggest models of proper human behavior, nor restrain men from doing the things men have always done. If a story seems moral, do not believe it. If at the end of a war story you feel uplifted, or you feel that some small bit of rectitude has been salvaged from the larger waste, then you have been made the victim of a very old and terrible lie. So here's my question this morning. In the light of O'Brien's guidance about a true war story, and in the light of the stories that visited me, and perhaps some of the stories that visited all of you this week in remembrance of those who have served on the front lines somewhere, how does one give a true Memorial Day service, or to widen it so clearly includes all of us? So it clearly. How does a congregation participate in a true Memorial Day service? In trying to answer this question for myself, that lieutenant's story about his Purple Heart has been the best guide. What my husband Scott heard him say that night was, the story of medals and ribbons and heroes is never enough. Alone, that is never true. Or to put it another way, celebration is never enough. It doesn't redeem the burden carried by soldiers as much as force them to bury it and carry it alone. And so, given this, it seems to me that a true Memorial Day service must, above all else, address and even try to heal this burden that soldiers carry alone. Lawrence Leshon is a psychologist who has made the burdens of servicemen and women his life's work. He says that in order to understand war and the impact of war, the first thing one has to do is make a distinction between mythic reality and sensory reality. War requires mythic reality, he says. Without it, societies and individuals simply wouldn't engage in war. A story needs to be created and told that enables us to relate to war as something other than organized murder. Stories that lift up the idea of the human race need to be dissolved and reshaped into a story about tribes. And these need to be tribes of not only us and them, but also enemies and heroes. Killing needs to be reframed as fighting for all that is true and just. Armies need to be seen not simply as masses of effectively trained men and women, but as tools and even servants of the mythic forces of good and evil. Simply put, mythic reality is not so much reality as the story we wrap around reality to hide it. Sensory reality, says Dr. Leshon, is something very different. It is the direct, more unmediated experience itself. It is the blood and death, not so much the meaning of the blood and death. It is a man in a uniform, different from your own, lying on the ground crying out for his mother, asking you, the one who shot him, for help. It is looking in his eyes and seeing human pain, not an inhuman other. Sensory reality is being engaged in a gunfight without a thought of God or country or goodness in your mind, only the single goal of trying to keep yourself and your fellow soldiers alive. It is not the meaning of the war, but the specific actions and moments that made up the war. Sensory reality is what Tim O'Brien is talking about when he refers to experience that doesn't instruct or uplift, but simply is. Experience that sits there and refuses to redeem itself. Sensory reality is the reality of those who fight wars. Mythic reality is the reality of the rest of us who talk and think about the war. And here's the hardest part about what Lawrence Leshon has to say. He says that those of us who live in and off of mythic reality want to keep it that way. It's not malicious, not necessarily even conscious. When it comes to war, no human being wants to face the sensory reality of it. The desire to buffer yourself from the obscenity and terror of war is natural and understandable. Military personnel simply have no choice. The rest of us do. They can't avoid the directness, the reality of it all. We can, and thus the gap between the warrior and those who send the warrior to battle looms very large. There's a scene in the World War II film, Saving Private Ryan, that gets at this gap. Tom Hanks' character is talking of the relationship between war and home. So I guess I've changed. He says, sometimes I wonder if I've changed so much, my wife is even going to recognize me whenever it is that I get back to her, and how I'll ever be able to tell her about days like today. I just know that every man I kill, the farther away from home I feel. Hank's character puts the emphasis here on how the killing on the battlefield distances him from home. I think it's also important to recognize that this is only part of what causes that distance. What happened back home also widens the gap. Our love during wartime, those of us back home aren't passive. We aren't just waiting for our loved ones to return. We are, knowingly or not, active. We too are engaging war, although in a radically different way than those in battle. We are telling stories, choosing bumper stickers, designing rituals, decorating our porches. We, again, knowingly or not, are telling ourselves a story about what war is. We are creating a reality to live in. And I think, if we are honest, if we are able to be honest, we have to admit that this reality, most actively cultivated and created, is a mythic one. In other words, while our soldiers are away, we as a country aren't engaged in an activity that brings us closer to those who serve. Instead, we're engaged in an activity that ultimately separates us from them. The truth, the hard and tragic truth of what happens at home in wartime, is not that we stand by our troops, but that we systematically build walls, mythic walls, to protect ourselves from our troops. Their reality, their sensory reality, is the last thing our fragile hearts and minds want to experience. So here's the thing. If a Memorial Day service is committed to truth, if it is to be a true Memorial Day service, it must be the very opposite of mythic. It must be loyal to what is imprisoned inside. It must be loyal to making sure that what is inside is able to come out, is able to be shared. Which is all a way of saying, I believe a true Memorial Day experience is as much about us as it is about those who have died in service. A true Memorial Day experience, I believe, doesn't simply honor the sacrifices made by military men and women. It also calls on the rest of us to make a sacrifice out of respect, honor, gratitude, and even love for those who have served. I think we are called to sacrifice and resist the comfort and protection granted to us by mythic reality. I mentioned a moment ago how we back home are knowingly and unknowingly create a mythic reality about war that keeps us at a safe distance from the painful reality of war and our soldiers who can't distance themselves from it. Recognizing the creative story building of this highlights, I think, that the way out must also be creative. Or to put it another way, our way out must involve new creative storytelling. Finding new stories that minimize and heal the gap between those of us who are civilians back home and those of us who served. And for me, here's a great news story just to do that. I learned a couple of years ago that in medieval times, some communities welcomed their soldiers home in a radically different way than we welcome them home today. Instead of being welcomed home with a parade and decked out in neatly pressed uniforms decorated with medals, returning military alive and dead were stopped outside the village gates. With the entire community in attendance, the soldiers were stripped of their uniforms, tenderly washed by the hands of the villagers, and given new clothes. Those soldiers who made it home. Those soldiers who made it home alive were then asked to kneel. The religious leaders invited and heard their confessions and offered the assurance of forgiveness. The villagers also knelt and asked for forgiveness, an acknowledgement that what had been done was ultimately done by all. All of this was explained in a radio interview. The person being interviewed was a military chaplain. He concluded by saying that what the medieval communities understood in a way we simply don't is that what military men and women need most upon their return from war is not a community that celebrates you like a hero and excuses all the terrible things you did, but a community that commits itself to looking at and sharing the burden of what was done. Those communities offered their soldiers so much more than celebration, he said, in struggling to see and help carry their burdens. They offered love. So friends, on this Memorial Day, may we remember to create new storylines that help heal the divide. And may we remember that by creating a new storyline that involves all of us, we in some way may actually help heal all of us. So be it. Amen. In a slight change of pace, we have hymn number 1025.
First,
we'll,
I want to say
yes.
thank you. Thank you so much. So you didn't read read the whole service. Yeah, that was the
No,
first time we'd seen that, that's what I thought.
Yeah. No, I was reading it as I read your parts.
I think she gets the part. What do you guys think? Yeah. As I said, that was not my story. Those were not my words. So thank you. It's written right here on this piece of paper because my husband said I should do this because otherwise I'd forget. For listening today to those words written by Reverend Karen Anderson. That's K-A-A-R-E-N. Do we pronounce it the same, you think? I don't know. But yeah, wow. There were parts that I can agree completely, other parts I just, anyway. When I was young, a little kid, lived in Jacksonville, Florida, every Memorial Day, one would be greeted by a veteran on the street corner offering a single poppy flower. This is a poem called In Flanders Fields by John McCrae, and it was the inspiration for the tradition of the poppy flower. No. In Flanders Fields, the poppies grow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely sing, flies scarcely heard amid the guns. We are the dead short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold on high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. We were going to sing hymn number 1025, but that's a very short one.
Okay, yeah, we can sing that, and then I have a little bit of a story I'd like.
Alrighty.
Oh, it can be after the song. It's
I don't know. We want to sing first and then hear the story? Okay.
Any
It's a short song.
It's a short song. Yeah, let's go for it. I even have the pages up.
This, if you got the blue book, it's 1025. We may have some lyrics up here in a little bit. This one is actually sung in a 4 or 5-part round. We're not going to do that. So, we're going to sing right through.
Just one time straight through, right?
Let's do it maybe a couple, 3 times.
Okie dokie.
Oliver, you got some words for us? Okay.
Okie doke.
Goes like this. When will the fighting cease? When will we live in peace? When our love breaks boundaries? When will the fighting cease? When we live in peace? When our love breaks boundaries? When will the fighting cease? When will we live in peace? When our love breaks boundaries? You can enjoy the laughing too. No,
Anybody's going to do it in Latin, it's only going to be you, Adam.
I'm happy to do this.
Maybe in a minute. I've got a little story to tell. So, the poem about the poppies was that was written around World War I. My dad, who was born in 1919, served in World War II, and he was out. He was one of 3 brothers, all of whom served in World War II. The other 2 had fairly cushy postings. He was out in the South Pacific, mostly in Guam, and he didn't really enjoy it. But I know very little about it because he never, ever talked about his time in the service. never. And with the way they work with people after they come back from war now, more people talk about it, but very few, certainly from World War II, and he never. So I knew nothing about it, and I know I was curious because as a child I read endlessly about World War II. So I didn't know how to ask him in a way where he would be able to share some of it. So I just, I literally got into fights with the librarians because I was taking out books and they thought I was too young. But it wasn't just that they were war books, because the first fight, I think, was when I tried to take out Sherlock Holmes, which is, of course, highly horrible for a child to read. There's, but anyways, so he was in, but one of the things I did find out, and I do have it's falling apart, but a book from his time in service, the letters and telegrams he sent home, there weren't a lot, but to his family, they saved them. And he wanted to be an illustrator. He had memory problems his whole life. And he wasn't able to pass the tests when he tried going to college to become an illustrator, so he didn't. He ended up working for the phone company. But after my mom died, which was about 10 years after my dad died, the family was going through stuff, and I got this book with his letters, and and sketches of things. I mean, it would show, there were sketches of fights and just all kinds of things. The one story I do know about his time in service, and he was a telegram man. He was the one who translated and coded and sent the messages. And he's got a poem in there, and I don't have all of this with me, but he's got a poem in there about, the stress of, generals waiting over you to find out what that message was and things like that. And he did get some sort of a medal at some point, and I'm not even sure for what. But the one story I do know is one night there was a hurricane. They were in Guam. And a tree fell on my father's tent. He survived, but his tent mate was killed. And this is just a hint of the damage that even somebody who was a telegram man and wasn't in the middle of the actual bloodiest part of the fighting, the trauma that he went through. Okay, so on that cheerful note, I'm going to, but just sending love to everybody, and
I thought you were gonna tell the story about remembering him always coming home with a poppy.
oh yeah, that one too. And that might be a good thing to, yeah.
Segue.
To segue to. So we've got some poppies, and there's poppies for everyone here. Now, some of you may know, some of you may not know, but for years, I'm probably since World War I, but I know certainly since World War II, the veterans groups would hand out poppies.
I thought it was a Civil War.
Is it? I don't really know when it started.
Okay,
World War I? Okay.
I knew that for sure.
And my dad, the telephone man, would come home. He'd take the train out of Chicago, and he would come home with a poppy in his buttonhole every Veterans Day, because of course he was a veteran, and he was, despite all the trauma he had, he was still proud. And yeah, that's tied into the whole mythic reality that soldiers kind of need if they're not getting that cleansing from the villagers and that forgiveness. Now, I'm going to ramble just a teeny bit. Just been in Europe. It was an amazing time. But one thing that was really striking, and it's not directly war, but it's indirectly, going into the different churches, so many of the churches had grinning, dancing skeletons. And there was so much, there was a chapel, Saint Chapelle, that has a rose window that has pictures of the apocalypse. And it's got the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in stained glass in it. Unfortunately, it was high enough I couldn't really see it that much, but I've looked at it online in pictures. And since then, and so people in medieval times were more tied into that. I mean, we know there was lots of mythic reality making, and a lot of it was directly related to the church, but so many people were dying for so many reasons, and plague was one of them. One of the there are something like 150 churches in Venice alone. 5 of them are plague churches. Now, I got a degree in microbiology, so that's something that's pretty fascinating. And I also used to get laughed at when I was in college because I subscribed to the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. And for some reason, my friends thought that was just maybe a touch odd. I don't know why. But anyways, the, hang on, point is trying to elude me. With these plague churches, they were actually put up in Thanksgiving after one of the surges of the plague. In Venice, for example, at times, some of the plagues took like 30 to 50% of the population. So they had to be maybe they really had some reasons to try to get their mind off of things and to look up to a potentially better time. But also, they had to be a little more tied into what was really happening and the death, because it was really hard to get away from. And that's all. But on your way out, there's poppies by the door, and please take a poppy in remembrance of all of those who have served and all of those who have died. With our thanks.
Question?
Yes.
Why the poppy? Do you know why?
Because of that
This
poem I
poem.
read.
In Flanders Field.
I'm not asking, I'm asking the bigger question. Why
Okay.
was the
You'd
poppy?
you'd have
Okay.
to ask the author of the poem.
But
Was it just directly poem related?
Yes.
But I'll do a
That's
stand-in. I read a lot of World War II, but I read a little bit of World War I too. But so Flanders Field was a place where so many people died in World War I. And the first line, in Flanders Field, the poppies blow. In between the crosses, row on row. That's why the poppies.
And the poppies came up because in Europe, it's one of the first plants to reseed when the soil is disturbed. So even going back to the Roman era, whenever someone would dig up a lot of dirt and then leave the dirt pile up there without putting anything else on it, you get poppies come up. It's kind of the way we have our little volunteer plants that grow in Florida.
Yeah.
They come up like that. And so grave sites, battlefields, anywhere there's soil gets really disturbed and left alone for 6 months or a year, you get a lot of red poppies in the first one.
There were a lot of red poppies, actually all over Italy and in Rome. And can I tell it's a funny story. It's not about war though. If you guys mind if I talk about something that's not about war. It's just a tiny
Think
little
you already
anecdote. Okay,
So
I'm
you
rambling.
may as well continue.
I might as well continue, got it. Okay, so I fell in love with some crows. Not quite enough to throw my husband over, but I fell in love with some crows in Rome. They're gray crows, they're huge, they're like raven-sized. I had to look them up to see whether they were crows or ravens. But they're not just black, but they're gray and black, and they're enormous. I first noticed them when Ken and I were wheeling our luggage from the train station to where we were gonna stay, and this little tiny to me garbage truck came by. It's probably about a third of the size of the garbage trucks around here. And it had some bright green on it too, so it was actually kind of cute. And they had a little bit of a luggage rack on it. Well, this huge crow comes up and lands on the luggage rack. And there was another one already there. And it was like, they take public transport to the junkyard to get dinner. It's like, wow, how cool is this? And then later, I saw they have open garbage trucks too. Okay, I liked the garbage trucks around too. Because yeah, I'm a little weird. And again, I saw a crow coming up to land, and he went in. There were 3 crows riding in that one, in the open garbage truck, so they were snacking on the go. You know, they even had, you know, meal service on that one. And they were, they didn't get too close to people, which is probably good, because I've read that they, that if they're breeding, and let's just say we saw some getting frisky, so we're getting up to that, they will attack people if they're getting too close to their nests. But they were around, you know, all the like statues and monuments and stuff. They were just so fascinating to watch. So that was one of my favorite delights of Rome. On a lighter note, actual lighter note this time. And thank you. I think the service is done. Okay, I deem the service to be done. How's that?
We gotta put out
Well,
the.
how about we extinguish the chalice?
Oh, yeah, that would be a good idea.
Your name's
I
by
think-
the
Okay, I'll read something. So, oh, I didn't realize there was, okay. Please join me in extinguishing this chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Oh, and Petra's got a benediction.
Okay. It was a great service. We laughed, we cried.
It was better than cats.
Better than cats. Cool. Okay. Well, she already said take a puppy. These words say, and maybe think of a way we can help to heal the divide created by war. I don't know. It's not, it's kind of like reparation to the Indians. Work toward being a people who can avoid the insanity of war. And then I say, go out into the world and remember you are worthy. You are loved and... Okay.
And by the way,
And-
giggling is trying to counteract the crying of the
Well, of course,
We have to balance, we need balance.
we need balance. Yuck. Okay, but, I mean, it's kind of a sad song, but it's also uplifting. And we're going to end your outgoing music. You can stay and sing, you can listen, or you may leave now and go to the social hall for whatever is in there. I know there's bagels and cream cheese. So we are going to sing Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
Not just puppies.
Don't have these words, I don't know. the screen.
It is not.
I know.
Whoever's gone. Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young birds and everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? All the soldiers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to the yards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time passing. Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time ago. Where have all the graveyards gone? Haunted flowers, everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?
Let's go eat.